What is going on, everybody? Welcome into our next positional breakdown video for the 2023 NFL Draft, and this one's going to look a lot different than my other top 10 positional videos. You know, this safety class, for one, it's just not very good, but it is deep. And just ranking safeties in general in a 1 through 10 vertical list just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, even at the NFL level, these guys just wear different hats, they do different things. And from a draft conversation, the order that you're going to look at these guys is going to change dramatically based on what system they run, what kind of safety you need. So instead of ranking them, I'm going to talk about 17 players in this video, so buckle up. But instead of ranking them in order, I'm going to put them in tiers here and just kind of have a open, free-flowing conversation about who these guys are, what I think they could be at the next level. Now, I will say I have them graded. Here's the list. Here's the 17 players we're going to talk about here today. If you want those sort of athletic splits, the coverage splits, my full write-ups on these guys, not just these 17 players, but the 28 safeties that I've evaluated in this class, all of the players in this draft that I've evaluated at other positions, you can get access to my full draft guide where you can get that information on my Patreon. It's patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. I'm also starting up 7-round mock drafts for all 32 teams there here today. So lots of great draft exclusive content there. You can support my channel in the process. It's patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Please do hit that like button as we commence. But tier 1 here is going to be Brian Branch and Brian Branch alone. He's the only player in this draft that I'm comfortable with in the first round, which just to begin with shows you kind of where we're at with this draft class. But, Branch is fascinating, and some people are going to have him as a slot corner, and that's understandable. He played slot corner in college, so there's going to be a bit of a projection here with his skill set, but I will say, he is outstanding as a slot corner. So much to like there. He's clearly puts in time in the film room. He understands opposing teams' tendencies. Oftentimes, he's a half a step ahead in terms of knowing what routes are coming his way, reading out route combinations, knowing what is heading his way. I think outside of Devon Witherspoon, he's better than any DB in this draft at that. But he pairs that with really fluid short area athleticism and excellent sort of information processing ability. He just has that quick mental reaction time. He pairs it with quick physical reaction time. So covering players out of the slot is definitely a strong suit for him, and that is what he did best at Alabama. You can't really get him on out routes and corner routes and dig routes too often because he just knows what's coming and he reacts to it way too quickly. The other thing is his tackling ability in space is literally unbelievable. This freaking guy missed 4 tackles on his career. There's safeties in this class that missed that many tackles in a single game. He went the whole 2021 season without missing a single tackle. He is a teach tape in terms of breaking things down with his feet, wrapping up, driving through the tackle, keeping his head up. It is remarkable to see how consistent he is at bringing guys down in space. So that's going to have value at the safety position. At the end of the day, we call it a safety for a reason because you're the last line of defense. So if they're not getting past you when you arrive, that's a plus. So you've got a couple of really nice things to work with there. He, like I said, he played slot corner. So if you want to talk about what he is as a safety, you do have to project his skill set a little bit. And I do think he could step in and be a dominant slot corner right away. But if you're drafting him in the first round and you want to get the most bang for your buck, I do think at least trying him at safety makes sense. So it's a little bit harder to do that. He played 15 snaps as a free safety per PFF in 2022. He played 49 snaps at free safety the year before that. But I do think the football intelligence will translate, and his ability to read the quarterback's eyes and make plays on the ball from a single high alignment. I think it's certainly possible he can do that. The only holdup there is he did run a 4.58. He just doesn't have a ton of long speed, and there's there's a lot of similarities in some of my favorite safeties in recent draft classes of guys that played slot corner but made that transition to free safety once they got to the NFL. You look at, even Minkah Fitzpatrick coming out of Alabama himself was like a 4.49 type of guy. But even the last 3 years, my number one safety the last 3 years has been Antoine Winfield, Javon Holland, and Daxton Hill. And all those guys played slot corner in college, but I liked with their speed all being in kind of that 4.4 range to be able to go back and play center fielding free safety. And with Brian Branch, I just don't know if his speed is good enough to thrive back there. I think he can do it with that anticipation, being a step ahead of the quarterback, reading out routes and knowing where the offense is trying to go with the football. But again, with that lack of high-end speed, the range is just going to be a question mark on his profile. Now, where I love him, and I think if you are a team that runs one of these systems, you've got to really push him up your board and really look at him as a true first-round player, and that is in those Fangio hybrid safety defenses. Not only did he run a quarters-heavy system at Alabama, and Nick Saban is kind of the king of the modern match zone defense. It's insane the amount of rules that he puts back there. So Branch is going to step right in and understand the defense. But how many times, for those that have been around this channel, how many times have I talked about converted slot corners thriving as a hybrid safety? And that's where my comp for him comes into play, and that's Micah Hyde, who was a slot corner for the longest time, went to Buffalo, and I mean, there's a lot of different ways we could go with this comp, because I think when you talk about him as a single high free safety, very similar, kind of not the fastest guy, but always a step ahead, and he's played some good single high free safety there. But let's get back to the quarters heavy stuff. That's where Micah Hyde is really at his best, is using those X skills, former skills as a slot corner to play quarters coverage where you're playing at about 10 to 12 yard depth, and you got to really match route runners at about midfield and flip your hips and get vertical oftentimes. It's an easy transition for these corners to go play quarters heavy defenses at safety. And Brian Branch, for all those reasons I just described, I think could be a high-end safety, a Micah Hyde level safety in those systems. So, if your teams like Green Bay, Philadelphia, the LA Chargers, those are common mock draft destinations for really good reason from a systematic fit perspective. Now, if you were more of a single high team, I think you can try him at free safety. I would probably have a higher grade on him as a hybrid safety than I would as a true free safety, because there's a little bit more of that risk there. If you can put him back there at free safety and see if he can handle it. And I think, like I said, I think he can, but you can always put him back to slot corner if he's not a great free safety. I don't see him as a strong safety. He's just not the biggest guy. He can do it, but long-term, like over time, I don't really want him taking on a bunch of tight ends and that kind of stuff. I think he's much better out in space. So he's a really fun player. A couple of comps I have for him are Jimmy Ward and Micah Hyde. I think he'll be somewhere in that spectrum. He's one of the highest floor players in this class. Whatever scheme you run, there's going to be a place for him to play, but I think his most valuable landing spot is going to be as a hybrid split safety, quarters heavy safety in one of those schemes. So that's obviously a lot of time spent on tier 1 Brian Branch, but well worth talking him up. But let's get into the depth a little bit more in tier 2 here. And we've got 4 players here that are, to me, day 2 prospects, not round 1 guys. And all guys that should be starting in the league within a couple years, but I don't know if any of these guys are automatic day 1 starters either. So let's start with Jartavius Martin out of Illinois. And I don't have to tell anybody here the importance of athletic ability at this position. It just increases your margin for error and increases your playmaking upside. Pretty self-explanatory. But Jartavius Martin's athletic profile is absurd. A 4.46 40. 44-inch vertical jump, 133-inch broad jump, and he even put up 15 bench reps for whatever kind of weight you want to put into that. And I mentioned earlier me liking some guys in years past, guys like Daxton Hill, Antoine Winfield, Javon Holland. I don't think Martin is as good as those players, but very similar in terms of really good athletes who played in the slot, because in college football, that is where you're going to be able to make your biggest impact on the game. It's Illinois put Kirby Joseph in a strong safety slot corner type of role when he was there, because in that defense and many college defenses, that's where you're going to get a lot of ball production. But I think those players, we saw this with Kirby Joseph, came out and played free safety for the Detroit Lions damn well, was a Rookie of the Year candidate if Sauce Gardner wasn't maybe the best corner in football in year one. But anyway, I think likewise with Jartavius Martin, he can do a lot more at the next level. And unlike Brian Branch, Martin did play some free safety. I think he played at least like 75 or 80 snaps back there, and he even made some plays when he got back there. The speed definitely on display. He's an instinctive guy. He's good at reading the quarterback's eyes. I think he's a little bit easily manipulated back there, but he's the guy that you really, if you're a single high team, you might be comfortable passing on Brian Branch in the first so that you can take Jartavius Martin in the second, just because of the upside and the projection to play that role is probably a cleaner projection. And, it's worth talking, like, he was really good in the slot, by the way. Like, he covered slot receivers, tight ends. He disrupted 20 passes in his last 2 years, which is like crazy production from a defensive back. Really good tackler with really strong arms that also show up in his ability to take on blocks. So you can absolutely bring him down into the box. And I think likewise we said about slot corners converting to those hybrid quarters heavy systems. Martin can do that as well. But if you're looking for a high upside potential free safety in this class, I think he's your guy. Even if there isn't a ton of tape of him doing that, you kind of have to take that gamble with these college safeties just because of how they're often asked to play. My pro comp for him is Darnell Savage, who's had an up and down career in Green Bay, but ended up going in the first round. And we'll see if we're done giving, or if we're still having hope for a guy like Darnell Savage. But just coming out kind of reminds me of that player with the speed and ability to play that free safety position. And then we got Antonio Johnson out of Texas A&M. He got some hype earlier on in the process, was seen in some first-round mocks very early on, but he's not a super dynamic player. But this is, as you're going to find out, a huge theme with these safeties. Played slot corner. Like, there, you have to do some projecting at this position. It's just not easy. It's a big reason why it's my least favorite position to evaluate. But with Antonio Johnson, he played slot corner. He performed it valiantly, but it's like, why are you playing him there? He is a north and south stiff free safety is really what he should be. Good long speed. He ran a 4.52, but asking him to like cover shifty slot receivers and navigate in short areas like that's just really not his game. So I project him as a free safety at the next level, and then you're just, we just don't know what his instincts, what his IQ is back there. I like his height, length, speed combination. I think from the slot, he showed good anticipation. He was dominant at taking away deep crossers in the SEC, really anticipated those coming, showed those long, rangy strides that can really cover a lot of ground in a hurry. And I think that can absolutely translate to free safety. He's a good tackler, really good pursuit speed. So if you're putting him deep back there, he's going to stay deeper than the deepest, but he's going to come down and help you in the run. So I get that there's not a lot of excitement for him because he just wasn't an ultra productive player, played that kind of weird slot corner role, but you got to kind of project this skill set to more of a free safety, I think. But if he ends up getting drafted to play strong safety, I don't know. I think he could put on like 5-10 pounds and play a little bit more physical and do that. But to me, it's, he should be a developmental long-term free safety that could be starting in a couple years. And a guy that he kind of reminds me of a little bit is like Rayshon Jenkins, who's been a decent player for the Jags, but that's kind of where we're getting at with this class. It's kind of tough to get excited about a lot of these guys. Then we got Christopher Smith in this. To me, he was probably the guy that showed you the most encouraging free safety tape in this class. He actually played that role at Georgia, played some single high, and played a lot of hybrid safety stuff as well. I really thought I was going to be super high on Chris Smith, but the 4.62 40-yard dash definitely took a little bit of buzz off of him, because it's just like, okay, how high of an upside player can he be? But you want to talk about a guy that, keeps good spacing on the back end, reads and reacts not just to the quarterback's eyes, but can really anticipate the direction the receiver's going in, a guy that understands all of the different zone match rules in a quarters-heavy system, just like they run at Georgia. Like, he's going to plug in and compete for a free safety job right away. He's a sticky safety on the back end, which, based on tape, it's hard to find a lot of those guys. I think he's faster on the field than his 4.62 40-yard dash indicated. I mean, he would fly to the ball coming downhill, and that's another thing I like about him and why I think he can play free safety. But obviously, there's a threshold for, you want speed back on the back end. But a guy that he really reminds me of, both in size and athletic ability, is Rodney McLeod, who's been a very good free safety in the NFL for the Eagles, the Colts. He's still hanging around at like 32 years old, because he's another guy, Rodney McLeod, almost the exact same size, ran a 4.62 40. He's never thrived off of great athleticism. He's had to be instinctive and understand where the ball is headed and get there a step early. So it makes sense why he's still playing at a high level into his 30s. And I see a very similar player in Chris Smith out of Georgia. End of the second round, early third round, I think he can come in and be a high floor safety for you. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be Sidney Brown out of Illinois. And there's a lot of hype for Brown, and I'm on board with most of it. He had a great Senior Bowl. His stock has risen about as high as anybody in this pre-draft process. Comes out, runs a 4.47 40-yard dash, 40.5-inch vertical jump, 130-inch broad jump. We talked about his brother Chase Brown, who also played for Illinois, and he was a freak as well. So good bloodlines there. I think they're both Canadian, but he played a lot. You guessed it, slot corner, dime linebacker, didn't play a lot of deep safety. Illinois very clearly feels like they're wasting these guys' talents if they're playing them too much deep safety. They had other guys doing that, because Kirby Joseph played a lot around the line of scrimmage, Jartavius Martin, Sidney Brown. These guys were all in positions to make plays, and Brown did that. I mean, he was kind of their tight end eraser guy, even though he's 5'9.5". He's just pesky, man. He gets in guys' hip pockets. He shows that fluid athletic ability. He's got good route squeeze to kind of stay in guys' hip pockets and react to route breaks. And at 210 pounds, 5'9.5", this guy is kind of built like a brick, and he can hold up against the run. He can take on blocks decently well. He's not amazing at it, because he's kind of small, right? 31-inch arms. He's 5'9". He's not physically imposing down there, but he gives it his all. I will say there's a big concern. He's just a little bit of a harder projection, because he played so much in the box, but he's not a good tackler. He's one of the worst tacklers in this class. He just kind of struggles to wrap up, and throughout his career, he just did not have a good tackling consistent percentage. He missed a lot of tackles, man. It is what it is. We said Brian Branch missed 4 tackles. Sidney Brown missed 40 in the last 2 years. 10 times more than Brian Branch. Missed 70 on his career. Shows you how special Brian Branch is in that regard. But it's a concern, man, for a guy that played a lot of box safety. If he's a really bad tackler, how's that combination going to bode at the next level? And then, you're projecting his skill set to more of maybe a hybrid safety, a 2-shell safety. I think he can do those things, but we just didn't see it. He existed down in the box. So I like him. I like his tools. I like the player. He plays with his hair on fire, and he's an instinctive coverage player. But there's a lot of projecting going on, and I think there's some bust potential with him as well. And I think there's a little bit of people trying to find a star here in a class that just might not have them. My pro comp for him is Jabril Peppers, who came into the league as a first-round pick, but very similar size, athletic profile, who's kind of had a hard time finding a home in terms of role at the next level, but he's had some good seasons. So I don't think it's a bad comp. But now we have our tier 3, and now we have kind of early day 3 guys that are potential starters someday, but probably not going to be competing for, starting jobs as quickly as guys that we just talked about. And that's going to be Jordan Battle, Daniel Scott, Marte Mapu, and J.L. Skinner. And I will admit, Jordan Battle, I said this tier is early day 3 guys. I do have a 3rd to a 4th round grade on Jordan Battle. He's kind of in maybe a middle tier between these 2 tiers, but I decided to put him back here. So let's start with Jordan Battle. Very sound player, very smart player. He's started a million games for Alabama. Does he have like 3,000 career snaps? I think.
3 hours later.
Yeah, 3,091 snaps in Nick Saban's defense. He's been getting significant playing time since his freshman year in 2021. He's been a sound player. He's never been a dramatic playmaker. He's played a lot of deep safety for them. He's played a lot kind of from the slot. I like his sort of instincts and ability to read out route combinations. I felt like from a free safety alignment, he took his role as, stay deeper than the deepest a little bit too seriously. He just didn't really, make anything out of playmaking opportunities. He didn't trigger a whole lot from single high, but he didn't give up a ton of big plays back there either. Where I thought he showed his best coverage was when they ran quarters, which was a lot. But that's really when he kind of had a green light to trigger and go, as you do in quarters, as opposed to, in quarters, especially in Nick Saban's defense, it's much more rule-based, and it's like you're reading out 1, 2, 3, and you have, a green light to close that space and attack guys and attach man-to-man. Free safety, it's much more open. It's much more instinctive. It's much more risk assessment. And I felt like when he was able to, have that green light by rule to go, he would do it more often, but maybe not naturally instinctive back there. So it's just something I noticed with him. But he's not quite Brian Branch in terms of tackling, but much more consistent as a tackler than like Sidney Brown, of course, and a lot of these guys. I think he can play around the line of scrimmage. He's got length, but he just doesn't have the best play strength in general. A do-it-all safety that, my pro comp for him is Jordan Fuller, who came into the league out of Ohio State as a day 3 pick and kind of earned a starting job within a year or two and has just been a stable force. Even if he's not some remarkable playmaker, I think he can start in the NFL. And then we have kind of like the complete opposite within this tier in Daniel Scott, much more of a higher upside, lower ceiling kind of guy. Now, I say low ceiling, but I think he can be a decent backup in coverage no matter what. He's insanely athletic. He really, boosted his draft stock, especially in this draft class, with his workout. He had a 4.45 40-yard dash, 39.5-inch vertical, 128-inch broad jump, insanely good agility scores, and 22 bench reps. And he's a full-size guy. He's coming in at 6'1", 209. But, there's some limitations there just on paper as well. He's only got 30-inch arms, which is way below average for the position. So when you're talking about how he is in run defense, it ain't great, man. He's not great at taking on blocks, as you wouldn't expect at that size. He doesn't carry a lot of play strength in those arms. Sometimes guys with shorter arms have really stocky, strong arms. I don't think that's the case with Jordan Scott. He's not a very consistent tackler. And I think he's going to have to exist as a cover safety, whether that's a split safety, free safety type, or a single high free safety guy. But I do think he has a good floor as a coverage player. He is 25 years old. He's played a million snaps, and he actually had really good college production. He had 6 interceptions and 14 passes defended over the last 2 years. He's got good instincts to kind of read and react to the quarterback's eyes from any kind of free safety alignment. So I don't think he's going to be a complete bust, but he's going to have to become a little bit more he's going to have to find a way to be more consistent as a tackler despite those shorter arms. And just continue to kind of prove that he has great feel at the position from a coverage perspective. But in a class that just doesn't have a lot of intriguing safeties, you're looking at him in the 4th round, you're like, all right, this guy was productive. He's incredibly athletic. You don't love that he's going to turn 25 this year. But you can see a world where he kind of comes in and eventually wins a job as a free safety. Then we got Marte Mapu out of Sacramento State. Kind of a late riser here. Again, a situation where I think some people are looking for a star in this class. They think he's Jeremy Chin. He's not Jeremy Chin. He's not even close. But he is a fun player. He played a lot of linebacker at Sacramento State, kind of played that wing overhang, and maybe he is a linebacker at the next level. He's going to be an acquired taste. He's going to be for teams that have more of that free safety, strong safety relationship, and Mapu's going to be your box safety. But his length is phenomenal. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. He runs the alley extremely well from the slot to the sidelines. He's a tough guy to block. He's not just got the size and strength and a take-on ability to block shed against tight ends and stuff, but he's really instinctive to kind of juke and navigate around those blocks. So you're trying to throw screens at him or run outside zone against him, good freaking luck, and he enjoys shutting that shit down. Coverage-wise, low level of competition. He was a better athlete than most of the guys he's going against. I think he's going to be a really good man-to-man tight end eraser type. I think he showed good zone instincts. I think there's something there if you want to put him in curl flats and hook zones. But covering slot wide receivers, not quite so sure how well he's going to handle that. And definitely not a guy that projects super well as a deep free safety. Now, he's got speed. We don't know quite how much. He didn't test. But he's got speed, but I just don't know if he's going to be at his best playing deep safety. But if you're looking for that, kind of Terrell Edmonds, true strong safety type, maybe even a weak side linebacker, he can definitely come in. I've got a 4th round grade on him. He can kind of come in and compete for a starting job right away, but is a little bit limited in terms of role. And then our last guy in this tier is going to be Boise State's J.L. Skinner. So he's technically number 9 on my safety board here. Unfortunately, tore I think it was either his pec or his bicep in a workout in February. So he hasn't gotten that benefit of the doubt to come out and run a good 40 and boost his stock in the way that maybe like Daniel Scott did, or confirm in like Antonio Johnson's case, comes out and runs a 4.52, which is a good time for a big guy. J.L. Skinner, it's like his athleticism on tape to me was very hit or miss. I think when he can build up his speed, he has very good long speed, but to me it looked really stiff. And likewise with what we said about Antonio Johnson, I just don't like him covering slot wide receivers, which Boise State asked him to do a decent amount. So I think there's a little bit of a role projection with J.L. Skinner to be a little bit more of a traditional north and south safety at the next level. I thought his just kind of overall coverage ability was all just kind of fine, but nothing got me too excited. I felt like watching him in his zone drops, sometimes he really navigated to the right space and got himself in playmaking opportunities. Other times he didn't really have an understanding of how routes were developing around him, and he was just kind of hanging out. Man-to-man, I know he can cover tight ends. He's going to be really good in that department, but like I said, covering slot wide receivers I think is going to be a little bit tougher for him. What I don't know about him is how well he can play from a deep safety assignment. I think he's got the speed to do it. He eats up a lot of space with his long strides, and if he can show to have good read and react skills at free safety, I actually think that could be his best fit. And just like I said about Antonio Johnson, reminds me a lot of a guy like Rayshawn Jenkins, who, you look at him at 6'3", 210 pounds, you kind of are thinking strong safety. But he plays a little bit lankier, a little bit more north and south, and actually might be better as a free safety, which is definitely shown in Rayshawn Jenkins' case. Now, Skinner's a willing run defender. I don't want to take that away from him. But I didn't think he was like some dominant enforcer, Cam Chancellor type either, or even like a Marte Mapu in the run game. So, he's going to be an interesting player as far as coming off the injury. Where do teams kind of see him playing? What kind of role he's going to end up at? But he's a talented player. I think he's got the speed for the position. He's got great size and the right kind of attitude and a good head on his shoulders. So, 4th round grade for me for J.L. Skinner. But I'm not going to act like I'm ultra excited about him or anything like that. All right, now we've got our next tier, and we've got tier 4A and tier 4B. These guys' grades all kind of mix and match, but there's two different kind of, you got your kind of higher impact, higher floor, lower ceiling types, which is going to be tier 4B. And then we have more of your developmental potential starter types, which is going to be 4A, which we'll talk about here. So let's start with Jay Ward out of LSU. Fun highlight reel kind of guy. Flies around. He's got a quick, almost like reckless trigger at times. If he's in a man-to-man assignment, a good scouting staff is going to say, let's run double moves on this guy because he wants to, read and react and really not care about getting fooled. So, keep an eye out for that. And I think that would apply if he was playing deep safety. He's just such an aggressive player. I would be a little bit worried about like his aggressive nature. He was also penalized 7 times. He's not afraid to grab. Those are your negatives on him, really, is he played the slot. He didn't play free safety, and he's super aggressive. Now, it led to some awesome freaking plays. Like, he blows up screens as good as anybody in this draft. He's got good ball skills. He's a leader of the defense. He plays with his hair on fire. He's going to be a super fun special teamer, but he's got to be kind of coached up to be a more disciplined player. I think he has the tools to be, just like we've said about all of these converted hybrid slot corners coming in and playing that kind of quarters style defense as more of a free safety. I think he could do that, being kind of his best projection. He could also just be a slot corner like he was at LSU. So he's got positional flexibility, should be a great special teamer, and you hope that you can kind of coach a little bit more discipline in there without losing some of those instincts. Next up in this tier, we have Jason Taylor out of Oklahoma State. Really just instinctive ball hawking deep safety here. He's got good speed. He has insane leaping ability. It shows up on tape and in his ability to kind of put those ball skills on display, really. I mean, he broke up 14 passes in his career. 10 of them he intercepted, but a 43-inch vertical jump. This guy is springy in his lower half. It also shows up in his acceleration, his ability to have that first step closing speed, and also some recovery speed there as well. 4.50 speed, I think, is about right. He's got good speed, nothing insane, but he's got range back there. And as we mentioned, really instinctive at kind of reading the quarterback's eyes and making plays on the ball from free safety. Now, teams want two-way defensive players, and he has got to get better as a run defense contributor. He doesn't have to be anything special, but he's one of the worst safeties in this class, maybe the worst at kind of calculating geometry from the back end. Number one, he's just way too aggressive to step up against the run, lost that sort of last line of defense post way too often in what I watched from him. And then even more so, just calculating pursuit angles to the sidelines. Trust his speed a little bit too much, honestly. He would undercut guys, lose that outside edge, and give up explosive runs there. So just from a pursuit perspective, really poor from him. His tackling was just very average for a college safety. Definitely room to improve that at the next level. And he did play mostly from the deep half, but it didn't seem like a priority to him. If the play wasn't around him, he seemed to take plays off. I don't like to say that, but it really stood out with him in terms of just didn't really seem to care about the run very much at all. So if that's something that can be improved, I think he has really good upside as a cover safety on the back end. And just like all these day 3 guys, he's going to have to continue getting better in coverage. They're showing good flashes, and he's shown good flashes, and there definitely could be something there. But a toolsy prospect as a day 3 pick, I think worth a gamble on. And then we've got Jordan Howden out of Minnesota, and I don't really know what to do with Jordan Howden because honestly, I think there's some untapped upside there. He's a really good athlete, good testing numbers. He's a really high character guy, a team captain that came in as a walk-on and got starting playing time in his freshman year. He's now played 3,000 snaps for the Gophers. And by the time, by his end of his career, the last 2 years, he's been a very steady coverage player. He's a phenomenal tackler. Just barely missed any tackles last year. He's got 32-inch arms. He's got great attacking technique. He arrives with some stopping power. He flashed some really exciting plays in coverage. He had an interception against Western Illinois that was just really impressive, showing some long speed. He ran a 4.49 at the combine, but just kind of showed some recovery speed, a rangy one-handed interception. But, on the other hand, I'll just be honest, I'm a Gophers fan. I didn't know who Jordan Howden was until I saw his name on a piece of paper in January. Like, he very rarely showed up. I remembered the interception, but I didn't really, think of that being a draft prospect at the time for whatever reason. And, I don't know, maybe I'm going off on a tangent here, but his week-to-week impact on the team wasn't anything all that special. And that seems to be the agreement among scouts that, he doesn't have these crazy playmaking instincts on the back end. And I saw that a little bit when he was getting into his zone drops. He didn't really move, sounds silly, but he didn't really move a ton and find his way to those playmaking opportunities. But is that something that can be coached into a guy that's gotten better year after year, that's a good athlete? It's just interesting to me. I think he's got a good floor as a player. He didn't really give up a ton in coverage. He's a good athlete and a great tackler, like I said. But are there some coaching points possible, or maybe a different scheme fit, where you can put him in a position where those flashes that he showed to make some of those really impressive plays can come through a little bit more? So, we're getting into late day 3 range here with a guy like Howden, but I think the tools are there to maybe be a starter someday. And then we got Anthony Johnson out of Iowa State, and he's interesting to me. If you just think back to everything I said about converted corners, Anthony Johnson was a 4-year starter as a perimeter outside corner for the Cyclones for the last 4 years. But he took advantage of that last year of COVID eligibility and converted to more of a strong safety slot corner role. And he played really well. I mean, he's a big-bodied guy. He's thick. He can run the alley really well in run defense. And he showed some good flashes in coverage as well. He's definitely going to be one of those projection guys as far as, okay, he's not an outside corner. I don't believe that. He could do it in a pinch, but he converted to safety for a reason. But I also don't think he's a slot corner or a strong safety. I think you look at him as a hybrid safety guy. When I say that, I'm talking about those quarters coverages and all of the things we've said about those converted slot corners making good quarters heavy safeties. I think if he can learn that role, his skill set's really perfect because he's got a good first step. He'll come up and play the run from those kind of 10 to 12 yard alignments that they play in a quarters heavy system. But he's going to have those corner skills to really come up and convert into man coverage and be a good cover player as well, potentially. So he's a fascinating player to me. I think he's a draftable prospect. But if it's not in one of those hybrid safety systems, I don't know. I think he's probably just a guy, to be honest. He's just a kind of balanced defensive back, special teamer, backup type that could probably wear a couple different hats. But the only place I really see him as a starter is in those quarters heavy systems. And then you got Brandon Hill to kind of wrap up this tier out of Pittsburgh. Really athletic guy, 4.43 40, 6.8 3 cone, a 4.12 shuttle. He played mostly slot corner at Pittsburgh, and I'll be honest, that very well might be where he's best at the next level, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a cornerback on a lot of people's boards. It would make sense. I mean, he's physical from that position. He's got good enough instincts, good enough athletic ability to hang there. I don't think he's the best slot corner I've ever watched in the world, but he'd be a sound day 3 prospect as a slot corner as well. But with that speed at 4.43 40, it is intriguing to think about what he could be as a deep safety, and could you get the most value out of him doing that? I'm not going to keep making the same points about slot corners going in and playing quarters, but I think he could be another guy that is in that situation. But I think he has free safety potential as well. He's just really never done it, so we don't fully know what his playmaking instincts and what his true range is going to look like back there. But just a athletic, tough, instinctive, undersized defensive back is really what he is. Definitely going to be a guy that can make an impact on special teams as coaches kind of figure out where his best fit is, and hopefully he can get some further development at the next level. But then we've got kind of tier 4B with 3 more guys I want to talk about, in 3 guys that I think are really good backups immediately, but are going to be tapped out a little bit physically speaking, and maybe in the role that they're going to play, but still players that I think deserve getting mentioned in this video. So Brandon Joseph out of Notre Dame, he was in like first round mocks to start the process, and it just goes to show you, like, you know, those early, like, preseason, we're talking about, like, you know, before last season started here, you know, those position rankings, those mock drafts, they produce disasters every year, and that's the case with Brandon Joseph. I think his athleticism and his upside was simply overstated at that point in time, as he was a productive player at Northwestern who transferred to Notre Dame. You know, he just wasn't a huge impact player for Notre Dame, but I really liked his feel in coverage. You can tell he's studied the game. He has good ability to kind of process information. He's kind of like a really poor man's Brian Branch, honestly, in a lot of ways. But, you know, a similar idea with just, like, he's in position more often than not, even though he isn't a great athlete. Now, it's going to limit his consistency in coverage because he's got to so frequently be a half step ahead back there. But I did like what I saw from him, kind of doing 2-shell, even single high deep safety, really just kind of moved well and followed the quarterback's eyes to the right spot and wasn't really drawn out of position too often. I think in intermediate zones, he's really good as well. He's really underwhelming as a run defender. He just isn't a strong athlete. He struggles at the point of attack as a tackler as well. So, you know, I compare him actually to Jordan Elliott, who's kind of bounced around the league at this point. He's going to be on his 3rd team now in as many years this year. I think Miami signed him. But, you know, he's been a kind of average, low-end starter, high-end backup that is probably going to be around the league for a while. Just isn't maybe that impactful high upside safety that we potentially viewed him as before the year started. Then we got Ji'Ayir Brown out of Penn State. Fun player. I like his character. He's a fun interview. He's got good ball skills. He's a really instinctive run defender. Like, man, some of the stops he made, just kind of navigating traffic, working his way around blocks. I actually think he could be a strong, like, even though he's not the biggest player, I think he could survive as a strong safety just because he's such a natural around the line of scrimmage. It's almost like, can you put on 15 pounds and play linebacker at like 5'11", 220? He's so good in that area. But, you know, playing deep safety, he's just not a great athlete. I didn't think he had incredible, you know, instinctive ability to kind of read the quarterback's eyes and you know, not to keep using the same terms, but find his way into passing lanes and cover guys back there. I just didn't love what I saw back there, and comes out, runs in the 4.6s. I think he improved his time at his pro day up to 4.58, which is, you know, that makes sense. He runs somewhere around that 4.6 range. He's just not a spectacular athlete, but he did make the most of interception opportunities when he was around the ball. And I think, you know, as a special teamer, a versatile backup that can play free safety, strong safety, he's a draftable player that has a good chance to hang around the league for a while. And then another guy, we're going to wrap up this video with a fascinating player, Demarcco Hellams. Another guy I didn't really know what to do with, because I was first exposed to Hellams in the Tennessee game. And I even tweeted, who the hell is number 2 for Alabama? He's the worst Bama defender I've ever seen, given the guys that they tend to start. And he was awful in that game. Like, he arguably cost, not even arguably, you can make a pretty sound case that Demarcco Hellams is the reason Alabama didn't get to play for a national championship in the playoffs this year, because he gave up multiple touchdowns and other big plays in that Tennessee game. It was brutal. Tennessee very clearly got the scouting report that this guy is going to bite on play fakes. He is one of the most aggressive quick triggers you'll ever see. And my God, did they take advantage of that. But, you know, as the draft process went on, and I'm now watching him against Mississippi State and Texas A&M and some of these other games, I get it a little bit more. He was a Senior Bowl invite. Like, he's not a bad player, Demarcco Hellams. He just had a really bad game, and there's a reason why he had a bad game. And it's like, he is over aggressive. He's not this sensational athlete back there. And as a deep safety, I just don't think that's where you're going to want to put him, because he's just a constant liability waiting to happen. But if you put him at a true strong safety position, it reminds me of like Terrell Edmonds for Pittsburgh. If you just play him around the box, put him on tight ends, hook zones, have him play in that intermediate part of the field where his quick instincts are going to be maximized because he's going to be around the ball more often. And when he does guess wrong, it's not going to, it doesn't blow up the whole defense, and you're not giving up a 60-yard touchdown if he bites on a double move more often than not from that position, or if he guesses wrong. And I think you could actually have a playmaker as, a guy that's just kind of a role player on your defense that, is your 9th or 10th best guy who's going to have some good games, have some bad games, really physical player on the line of scrimmage. The more I watched of him, the more I could kind of see where he makes sense at the next level. And I'm like, I could actually see him being a decent starting strong safety that, he might get 4 or 5 picks a year and be kind of a, player that fans like because he makes plays, even if there's going to be just as many plays, if not double the amount where he's busting his assignment. But, I kind of ended up liking him as the process went on, and I'm glad we were able to kind of wrap up the video with him. So there's 17 safeties. I hope you were able to kind of follow the format. I know it's not quite as clean as our top 10 positional rankings, but I think this was the best way to do it for this position group. There's a lot of different flavors. A lot of these guys are going to have to develop at the next level and find the right home. So I hope I did a good job covering who the best safeties in this class are, what their skill sets are, where I think they end up getting drafted. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to be doing a similar video to this with the offensive line class, so do drop your comments down below, kind of with the format, any tips and pointers for how maybe I could make this easier to follow, or let me know if it was good to go. But yeah, we'll see you guys very soon for the offensive line video. I'm also going to be doing a live stream Friday night of we're doing kind of a dress rehearsal mock draft situation. I'm going to be drafting for the Texans in a mock the mock live stream where there's 32 users, a lot of other draft analysts. Cover One, the network Cover One is putting it on, so you can look forward to that Friday night. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you later. Peace out, everyone.